Good morning. It's the 13th of September 2022. The weather is good in Ireland, very good weather, and you're very welcome back to the channel. This is more about energy, and we're looking at this concept of pumped storage. Now remember, what I'd like to see on all this energy business is engineers having an input, proper compliance with the law, because none of this stuff that the European Union, America, or any other country, or Ireland, is new or novel. This is all known 100 years ago. It was known 100 years ago what the result is. And my point is that I want to test it again, put up a pilot scheme and see how it works. Everyone wants Ireland to punch above its weight. And we're facing an unbelievable difficult winter, particularly in Europe, from the point of view of energy, survival, health and safety, and industry, economy, and the whole lot. Now, this was partly brought about by refusing to listen to people who cried wolf, and I was one of them. Now, one of the things we're going to look at, you get this thing, right, you've proved that wind energy is not just the answer. Well, then we'll do hydrogen. I've made a video on hydrogen. Hydrogen is a component of most hydrocarbon fuels, and it's extremely difficult to handle and extremely difficult to make, and it takes a lot of energy to make it, and you need special electrodes, and even they have to be made from platinum, and it's doubtful if they'll last either. There are huge problems. Yes, you can make a little hydrogen. I made it here in this place, and you can make a little of it. Nobody denies that. It will burn, it will run an engine, it'll do all those things. That's not the point. The point is, where do you get it? It's scarce enough on Earth, actually. Now, this again is 47X. We're going to look at another thing they come up with. Well now, the wind doesn't work. Well, we've tried hydrogen. He's debunked that as well. We'll go for pumped storage. Pumped storage. This is what you get up about Dunleary and Blackrock and these places on the bus. I do go on the bus deliberately at school time when I'm up there to hear them on about this crap, and to hear them all on about, and RTE is planked right in the middle of them. Now, if we take the Phoenix Park in Ireland, it's a big park on the outskirts of Dublin. It's 1,750 acres. It's a place where you go for recreation. There are deer up there. Beautiful place. Wonderful facility to have. I don't know of any city that has such a facility. And it is 1,700 acres. Now, bear in mind that it takes 1 metre falling 100 metres of water to create 0.83 of a kilowatt hour of electricity. So a metre falling through a pipe, let's say a 100 millimetre pipe, might just boil a pot of potatoes. It might just do that. That's coming down 100 metres. So that's the figure I'm working on. That's the generally accepted figure, 0.83. Now, so the Phoenix Park in area converted to hectares is 707,000, and we say that this is a pump storage facility on the top of a mountain, and there was one proposed for Mayo on Glinsk over there in Mayo. I was at the meeting. Pat Robert was there, the minister, and he was gung-ho, and this young fella straight out of university gave all this idea. What a ridiculous plan. And I stood up and I told them this. And I was the black sheep. They didn't want me there telling about this. They were going to dig a canal in from about Killala somewhere and bring it in to this mountain, which is 12 miles inland. Then they were going to build a parallel canal to bring the water out. Then they were going to pump the water up to the top of the hill and to a lake and let it fall down again to generate electricity. Now, we have such a facility at Turlock Hill in Wicklow. And about 10 years ago, I went up to see it. You could go in to see it. And I went up and I made the mistake of telling them who I was. And no soon as I was into it, there was a fire alarm raised. Now imagine, the minute I go in, the place goes on fire. There was no smoke, there was nothing, and we had to get out, and they cancelled the video. No doubt that was just deliberately to stop me carrying out my research. So the key to that is never ever tell your enemy any of your plans. Always keep them to yourself. I made that mistake. So anyway, if you multiply the area of the Phoenix Park by 20 metres high to get the depth of the lake that you'll be creating, you have 14,140,000. cubic meters. 14,140,000 cubic meters. Now, you have to multiply that by 0.83 to get the kilowatt hour output for emptying the entire facility, and then because electricity is produced wholesale and for by generators and all that at the megawatt hour. They don't use kilowatt, they use megawatt hour, which is 1,000 kilowatts. You would get then, by my calculations, 12,485 megawatt hours. 12,485 megawatt hours of electricity out of the facility, and that's everything going well. Now, Ireland's average demand, it's actually higher than this, but we'll pick this figure, is 4,000 megawatts. In other words, on any average day, if you checked it over 24 hours, we're using about 4,000 megawatts. It's gone up a bit with the data center. Okay, and that's then multiplied by 24 to get you the daily demand. So if we divide the output of this theoretical high pump storage plant, 12,485 megawatt hours, by the average demand of 4, we see that this facility would run Ireland for 3 1/12 hours. So 3 hours and 10 minutes. And you imagine the cost of building that and all of that. But it doesn't end at that. The water has to be got up. Now, bear in mind, if it was 200 metres above sea level, you'd have a greater output, but you'd have more pumping. You'd have a bigger strain on the pump, pumping it up. If it was 300 metres, you'd have an even greater strain. So the higher it's up, the more power it takes to drive it up. You get more power out, admittedly. Now, the recovery rate, according to all the sources there, is 70 to 80%. We'll say 75%. So remember that they're saying you'd use wind energy for this and solar. You have to have 40% of the grid renewable or conventional generation, such as coal, oil and gas. And there's a row on at the minute, whereas EirGrid, the system operator, claims that you can use less. You can have up to 35%, even down as far as 30% of the grid at any one time. Only has to be fossil fuel, conventional, whereas the energy regulator has said that when you do that, when you go down to that, you start breaking off the components of the generators, the conventional generators, because of the ramping up and down and the huge abuse this gives as the conventional generators have to rise and fall with colossal pressure of steam. It is unbelievable. It would knock down a house easily. So when you do that for a long time, you start breaking off pieces, and the next thing, bits of the turbine fly back into the rest of the turbine, and you have an absolute disaster. And this happened at Whitegate a year ago. It took 2 years ago. It took 2 years to get it repaired at enormous cost. So just bear in mind, I say, if you don't keep a certain amount of fossil fuel in the system, you will end up with your turbines breaking, and you'll be worse off than where you started. It's like driving a car in first gear all the time. You'll eventually pay a price. There'll eventually be a price to be paid for doing that, not only in fuel, but in the wear and tear on the car and all that. So if we take it that the recovery, that the 40% fossil fuel must be there, and this thing is only 75% efficient, based on their figures, 75% efficient, that would mean that the 40% would only be 30% because of inefficiency, and you'd have to increase it by 25% to bring it up to 50%. So in simple man's terms, or woman's terms, you'd need 50% of the grid doing this pumping to be fossil fuel, conventional generation, because of the inefficiencies that are created in the recovery of the power and all of that. You'd need more power going in. So what this means is that when you do your calculations, you would need more than 40% to pump to do the pumping, because of the recovery rate is less. Now, you could do it the other way. You could just say you'd use 40% and the recovery rate is 75%. It's the same thing. You need more fossil fuel to make up for all the inefficiencies. So, as I say, when I went to see Turlock Hill, the Irish facility, and told them who I was, they said they started a fire and there was no smoke. So there is a fire. The fire with no smoke, probably the first time in history, and as I say, fire in the hole at Turlock Hill. The bottom line is this is all known in the universities all over the world. There are pump storage facilities in the world. There's one in Ireland. There are several in all over the world. They do not relieve the situation that you need fossil fuel. If they did, they'd be using it. And don't forget, Norway has another form of hydro. That is where the rivers fill up. They fill up the lakes, so you don't have to pump it. It's rain does it. But it just so happens that Norway is one of the biggest producers and exporters of fossil fuel, which is a pity in a way, because if they didn't have that, we'd be able to measure it a bit better. But they still have conventional generation running there all of the time. Okay, so the bottom line is, when you'd count the fuel cost, the environmental cost, the emissions cost, and all of that of keeping and maintaining a facility like this, when you consider that you still have to have fuel into it. Now, what the Greens are trying to tell you is, oh, we'll use the wind energy. There is no system in the world that isolates wind energy. Why aren't they putting the wind turbines at the base of the mountain or on top of it? But you cannot do that. If you try to use wind energy alone to do the pumping, you'd have to have a system separate and complete. I'm not saying that you wouldn't get some pumping. You might do it, but that would be another huge part of investment. And the Greens are very careful never to suggest having pump storage using wind alone or solar. They make sure they keep it mixed in with the grid, because there is the lie and there is the deceit that they're telling, and that our government and the world's governments are trying to tell us. And even in Germany now, which is facing the worst of this crisis, this is September 2002, they have this facility. Neighbouring Switzerland have this facility. They have all done this to some degrees, and yet it's not worth a halfpenny, a half penny, or a half cent. It's not worth that to them. It doesn't do the job. It's not the answer. We'll have to look for the answer somewhere else. And had Putin not invaded the Ukraine, it might take another 2 years of me ranting on here about this, but now this has happened. And I believe this is what happens when a country like Russia sees you being stupid, sees their quarry or their enemy being stupid. They let them plough ahead, and then they turn off the taps, and then they say, oh, Ursula von der Leyen, oh. We've been shouting at them to go and do the proper assessments required by law for years. They wouldn't. And we've been trying to tell them this and tell our politicians this, and not one of them listened. Not one of them listened. I heard today that Mick Fitzmaurice, the TD, who would be largely on our side, has recommended that Derrybrine be kept open. But the problem for him and the problem for the government is, we're being fined 5 million a day every day it's kept open. No, we're being fined 1,500 euros a day for every day it's been kept open, and we've already been fined 5 million, and it's there in contravention of the law. So where does the law stand in all of this? It should be primacy, but no, it seems to be that politicians want to keep it, and Mick is making a serious error when he thinks that Derrybrine is doing anything for us. Derrybrine is a result and needs vast amounts of fossil fuel to run it. And when there's no wind blowing, it needs vast amounts of fossil fuel electricity, and it's competing with the poor and the people who are least able to pay for the electricity that is available. That and the data centres in calm weather. That is the hard fact. But going back to my principle on 14 minutes, pump storage is not an option. It's not at the races under any circumstances. It's a stupid concept, this whole idea of storing such vast amounts of electricity. Because you have the grids of the world, and the Irish grid have so much of a need for electricity. So much of a need for electricity. You just multiply 4 megawatts at any one time by 24 hours. 4 megawatts by 24 hours. And you can see what a colossal amount of electricity that actually is. You couldn't produce it, that's the fact. Only fossil fuel can produce it, or river hydro, or nuclear. That's the hard fact until we go back and look genuinely from the point of view of engineering and science on what the options are. But they have nothing. The Germans, the EU, they have nothing in the pipeline. They are in a serious situation right now, and they brought part of this on themselves. If they hadn't to do what they did, they would have all kinds of gas storage, they would have all kinds of other facilities that worked, they'd have insulation of homes, they'd have alternatives to using other things. They're gathering up firewood now in Germany. Firewood, going out trying to cut sticks. And that's what is happening. And here with coal reported to be 38 euros a bag, I don't know how we're going to do. Folks, I hope I've explained that. Hydrogen is out. Pump storage is out. O-U-T. And there are other ideas in the pipeline, and electric cars is one of them. And we'll look at them in another while, and they don't seem to be doing the job either. California has told their motorists not to charge their electric cars. They have no electricity for them. Folks, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but why not be realistic? I've never seen any benefit coming from delusion. I've never seen or noticed any benefit from a society deluding itself. See you back for something. Bye.